What's up, guys? This is Carter Thomas with Coin Mastery TV. Make sure you hit that subscribe button right below this video. Hit the notification bell too to get notified every time we put out new videos talking about cryptocurrency, financial revolutions, all that good stuff, world domination, etc., etc. Obviously back in California. It's good to be in Hawaii for the week, but honestly the forecast took a turn for the worst. Looked like it was going to be a little rainy. And so I just said, well, let's go back and crush some crypto. That's one of the benefits of crypto and being an entrepreneur is that you can change whenever you want, which is pretty awesome benefit. So we're back, got all the tech and equipment back, blazing bandwidth. And we're going to talk about Bitcoin. We're going to talk about what's going on with the overall market. Overwhelmingly good news. A couple pieces of news that I thought were interesting, and really just an overall sentiment. There's really not a lot that I see happening right now on the front lines. I think that there's always a million things going on in the back behind the scenes, but at the very least, we can just talk about what you can do or what we can do to prepare for the rest of the week, potentially the rest of the month. I think we're headed towards some interesting new things, and let's chat about it. As always, my daily disclaimer, as you guys love to hear, this is not professional advice. I am not a professional advisor, so please do your own research. Just got to make sure we say that for all the lovely people watching that are, So let's take a look at Bitcoin. If you guys remember, we drew a bunch of these lines last week, and it's been cool to watch this whole thing unfold. We started with a retracement. Now we're just getting into basic resistance and support levels with a few different lines in here to represent it. And as you can see on the 4 hour, we definitely caught the support. I'm going to turn off the auto here so that it's a little easier for you guys to see this. I can pull this down. And so on the 4 hour, you could see how we saw a little bit of resistance right at this, let's call it 10,000, 10,100 line. It dropped back down and shot way through that. We saw a little bit of resistance right below this 11,500 line, right? So it looks like there was a bit more resistance right around here than we expected, right around 11,200, which we're seeing again. We're testing this as we speak. It came down, and if you go into the 1 hour, you can see it's actually bounced right off of that line. So it was pretty much right on where that support level would be. So if you remember what we talked about, when you're going to buy into, when you're going to deploy, in this case, fiat, if you're buying Bitcoin, but really for any coin, it's the most tempting thing is you want to buy it as it's ramping up because you're like, oh man, this is going, I don't want to miss it. That's classic FOMO. And I know that might sound like, oh, obviously I know that. But the funny thing is, the people that think they know all the beginner and intro stuff are the ones that do it more than anyone else because they don't take it seriously. They try to get too advanced and they forget the fundamentals. And so the fundamentals tell you anytime it ramps up, it's always going to pull back. And it's always going to pull back typically to a previous resistance level. That becomes a support level. And then you can start to deploy your capital and be smart about it. And that's exactly what we talked about. And that's what I've been doing, right? Not only a little bit with Bitcoin, but with Litecoin and a few other altcoins, which we'll talk about. And so it's good to see this in action because it works. I mean, this is what technical analysis is all about. And I like to keep it simple. You're never going to see me drawing 900,000 things on here. It's lines. That's it. And these are just different levels of that. So the next one that we're going to watch, obviously right now we're going to break through this previous short-term high, and then we're going to watch this 11,000, let's call it 11,600, give or take. And this could go maybe up and down 100. So it's somewhere in there, and we're going to see if it can break through that. I have a feeling we're going to see some pretty strong resistance at that level. That's going to be a big deal. And then this purple diagonal line, which if you're listening to the podcast, it's going left to right downwards, right? Like a downward slope. This is the trend line of the bear market itself. So if we break through that purple line, which we will at some point, I'm very confident about, that's when we could start to say that this may be a bull run. And as insane as it might be to think about, if we really scroll out, what that may mean without doing log chart is that this whole thing is just one big, huge bump in the road, right? We are going to infinity and beyond. And obviously we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but that would be a very compelling point if we could hit it. So what we are watching, or what I'm watching, I should say, is I'm waiting for more support levels to hit. So we got this support level. I had some buy orders. Now we're just watching the stop losses to make sure so it doesn't go down below your buy price. That's really the way to do it. You can do a trailing stop if you want, but I don't try to get too cute about it. We're going to watch this next resistance level, and as we watch that next resistance level, you get a few options. If you're doing a short-term trade, you can scalp your trade and you can sell off and keep some profit, or take it all back to fiat, or you can wait on that and then wait for it to come down. Potentially, this new resistance level may become a support level. So it may come up, hit this line, dip back down to right around 11,200, give or take, and then we really need to gear up for it to move. Oops. Didn't mean to move that. We really need to gear up for it to shoot straight through that purple line. So exciting times. If you don't know, it's actually a federal holiday in the United States today. So the global equities and like all the traditional capital markets are not trading. At least the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, the equities markets, and things like that. So that's something to keep in mind. Typically, we see some pretty good action in crypto on those days because, the traders aren't working. They have a little more attention. Flipping over to the major market, overall market, we can see right now we're at 500 million. I'm sorry, 500 million. Yeah, right. 500 billion in total market cap. Now we crossed that earlier. We dipped back down, and now we're coming back up. So 500 billion is a big deal. That means that we are on our way back. I mean, we were really hurting back here. I mean, we were down to like 280, give or take. So we're making substantial progress. I think it's really important to remember. I mean, this is almost doubled since, even a week and a half ago. Like the entire market cap has doubled. It's crazy, right? I mean, that's an insane amount. So if you've been in this for a couple of months or for a couple of years even, you may think, oh, well, we're not back at 20,000 yet, which is what our last all-time high was. But remember, it's all relative. And that's why it's really important. You want to buy the dips, because when it goes down, you got to make twice as much to get back up. The other big story here, Bitcoin dominance is coming back up. Now, this is actually a little surprising. One of my predictions for 2018 is that Bitcoin is going to either flatline or lose dominance. However, that is predicated on the idea that fiat flows straight into altcoins, meaning right now, if you have US dollars or euros or whatever, Australian dollars, and you want to buy an altcoin, you really need to buy Bitcoin or Ethereum first, send it to an exchange like Binance or Bittrex, and then you buy your altcoin. If that changes, or I should say when that changes, and you can just go straight from fiat into altcoin, I believe this is going to dramatically change, right? So what does that mean for you? I think in the interim, Bitcoin is probably just going to continue to be the most dominant coin. It's probably going to get more dominance until that happens. And it's very, very hard to anticipate or predict in markets. It's much better to be in a strategic position that you can react to any situation. So the way to do that, honestly, is just to have a balanced portfolio. If you're all in Bitcoin, you may want to think about diversifying into large caps, bunch of mid caps, maybe a few small caps or whatever, so that if and when this dominance does shift, you're better prepared. That's how you can prepare for that if you want to do it. All right, let's just look quickly at the altcoin market. Again, this is one thing we've been talking about. Switch this to Bitcoin. I mean, if you think Ethereum's the future, or if that's the coin that you are looking to accumulate most of, switch to Ethereum. I use Bitcoin just because it's more of a standard right now, the higher dominance, but there's Ethereum, Litecoin, they're all solid. And that's how you can start to do your analysis. One trend that we're seeing is that these forks are driving a lot of prices. And we're seeing this across the board, right? Ethereum Classic is getting a fork along with all the marketing, which you talked about with Digital Currency Group and everything else around it. Monero's, there's a fork coming out with Monero. Litecoin has a fork. I believe Litecoin actually might have been yesterday, so that may be over. C Classic with a fork. Now, let me be clear here. I'm not saying these forks are all legit or that they're worth doing or anything. I'm just saying that in February 2018, that is an effective motivator for people to buy a currency. Hate it or love it, that's just what's happening. And so that is one of the big drivers behind the coins that are getting the traction. That's one of the reasons why Litecoin had a big pump last week, but it seems to be kind of stagnating now, is because the fork was, I believe, on the 18th. I got to double check on that, which would be yesterday. And so that's what happens. The other big news that I saw is Polymath. And I've been talking about I shouldn't say, I have not been talking a lot about Polymath. I mentioned it a few times last week. I owned Polymath, full disclosure, good amount of it. And purely as a play on the security tokens market. Now, I don't know if Polymath is going to be the winner, right? There's like Templum. There's a bunch more that are coming out in the coming weeks, coming months. There's ICOs coming out. There's tokens that have already done ICOs that will be listed on the exchanges at some point. But the securities token market is a big niche. It's going to be a big deal. And you should look into this. I don't know if you want to buy Polymath, terrific, go for it. That'd be great. But I would just encourage you to go learn about securities tokens, learn about the ST20 protocol, learn about how what it all matters. Essentially, this makes it tokenizes anything so that it's compliant with the SEC and or the CFTC. It makes it so that it's a compliant securities protocol versus utility tokens where they have to go through the Howey test and do, it's kind of a gray area. Security tokens, at least the promise is that it will make it so that it's already security. So if you're in this protocol, you can be pulled into the securities blanket much more easily. There is a much more rigorous set of standards that will allow it to happen. But that is interesting, right? To see this thing doing well. I know a lot of people in the finance world that are interested in Polymath and also just in the security tokens. And I would encourage you guys to go check it out yourself. I do think that it's worth learning about. Now, speaking of securities, our good friend Giancarlo, the chairman of the CFTC, very active on Twitter now. Great to see him there, and smart guy. I give him a lot of credit. He really walked into the lion's den of crypto, and he's doing a good job as far as I can tell. One thing he tweeted about today, and this is just what he tweeted. I think it's better just go to the primary source in any situation, is a press release about integrating or partnering, I should say, with international financial with other countries with their financial compliance, governance, whatever you call it, like people, right? I just totally butchered that. But you get what I'm saying. And this one is with the United Kingdom's Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA. What this means is that the United States is reaching out to the United Kingdom and saying, look, we've got financial technology things going on. You've got financial technology things going on. Many of these are going to be international and affect both of us. We should join forces in how we make decisions and how we implement policy and how to make sure that it becomes a global standard. It becomes, we have understandings across the board. You are going to see more of this happen. This is not just going to be the United States and the United Kingdom. There are going to be more and more countries that do these kind of, have these kind of relationships. And it also is going to be very, very interesting when it gets to who is not participating in these relationships. And that's going to be way down the road. I mean, that's like years off. But the big takeaway is that right now there's a lot of what's called regulatory arbitrage, right? So there's lots of different kinds of arbitrage in finance. Regulatory arbitrage means that one country has one set of rules, another country has another set of rules, and that you can move between borders and profit from it. Different tax laws or different exchange rates or whatever it may be. And this partnership, without totally spelling it out, is very obviously geared towards crypto. If I had to bet, I would think that they're really interested in not only enforcement, but in the exchanges. That was the thing that Giancarlo was really big on, is getting insights into the exchanges, because it is through those exchanges that a lot of the market manipulation and a lot of the market kind of integrity is lost. And so I think that that's what they're really going to try to talk about, and how that's all going to play out. So this is a really, really good macro trend to keep your eye on, because the way that the international arena unfolds is going to dictate a lot. And we want to just, it all comes down to having a good discussion, being educated, talking to people just keeping things above board, and not making things like scams and stuff like that be the headlines that people talk about. Talk about how this is really great technology. It's creating new jobs, creating new opportunities, innovation. Those are the conversations we want to have. That's also why this channel, we don't talk about what the hot news is or what the big clickbait stuff is, because it doesn't help anybody. It's entertainment, right? And on YouTube, in any situation, especially in like this, what ends up happening is that people become entertainers, and they monetize you for your time. And if you are not valuing your time at the highest possible premium and auditing everything that you are consuming and saying, how is this making my life better? How is this benefiting me? You need to cut out the stuff that's not actually making you better, smarter, more educated, more informed. Like, that's how you get ahead, right? Now, lastly, I thought this was just this is going to be, I think, a very, very interesting case unfolding as it relates, not only to the regulation, but just as it relates to the market in general, is Telegram, which is a Russia-based company, raised $850 million already, which puts them at like 1.8 billion or something like that. I mean, that's just like, why do you need $1.8 billion? And two, what is going on? I mean, that's just insane in my opinion. That being said, as these ICOs get bigger and bigger and bigger, obviously they have money, they have the ability to bring in securities lawyers, to have some level of defense, or defensibility, I should say. But at the same time, these are the targets. I don't know anything about how this is going to play out. I just do know that if you're going to take down an ICO, you're probably going to try to take down the biggest ones. And we'll see how this plays out. I have no idea what's going to happen with Telegram, or TON, I guess is the token. I don't even know if it's going to work. I'm more interested in this as a precedent as opposed to an investment decision, meaning what precedent is this going to set for future ICOs? Because at some point, there's going to be a limit on how much these are going to be able to raise. Okay, being able to raise $850 million, that's insane. I mean, it's a lot of money, right? But at some point, someone's going to come along and raise $1 billion, and then someone's going to raise $2 billion, someone's going to raise $5 billion. And there's going to be a critical moment at which the SEC in the United States is going to come in and say, this is not okay anymore. Because as much as I believe in the token model and like how blockchain and all that can work, realize that when you invest in traditional venture capital and you get primary, there's different share levels, and there's also guarantees where you can get your money back. There's a lot of protection involved, especially when dealing with this amount of money. The thing about ICOs and tokens is that those protections are not in place yet. And so as this gets bigger and bigger without the clear regulatory framework that can allow for that protection, it's just gonna it gets very, very dicey. And there's a lot of trust involved and a lot of like hoping that the incentives work out in everyone's favor, which I think we can all agree is a very much a hit or miss game. So watch this as a regulatory precedent, as opposed to, hey, is this going to become the next EOS? Is this going to make, become a multi-billion-dollar company like overnight? I think that's secondary to what the real opportunity is here. So it's an exciting time. I do think that we are going to see a lot of money start to come into crypto relatively soon. I think the other thing that I would encourage people to keep in mind is that, and this is just anecdotal, this is from just talking to people. It's hard for a lot of people in the banking or investment world to come into crypto, not just because of the volatility, but it's hard for them to come in. And let's say they want to buy some Lisk. I mean, I'm not saying they would, but I'm just picking a random coin. And they look at Lisk, they do all the analysis, they say they want to buy it. Let's say that like 20 people own half of the Lisk supply. That makes it very difficult for anybody to come in and make a huge investment, especially if you have a publicly traded company, and this potentially might go on your balance sheet because you do not control like nearly enough about that. I mean, 20 people could tank that asset for you and just mess up your books and really hurt your earnings price or share price or whatever. So that's something to think about, is that like this idea of decentralization is kind of morphed into us versus the man, right? Like the big evil banks and the government and all that sort of thing. Like that's kind of what decentralized has become to mean. But you got to remember, none of these coins are equally split, or I mean, they by no means do they have an equal distribution. There are people that own massively disproportionate amounts of every single coin on this in cryptocurrency. I mean, I'm sure there's some exceptions, but that's something you got to understand, is that it's very, very difficult for a bank or anybody to get in, because typically when you look at let's say it was the IPOs, the 90s, for example, it was founders, employees to a certain extent, but then the investment banks would come in and they would get a huge chunk of not only equity, but they would also get awesome deals on the shares, so that the public is the people that get the last 10%, while 90% of the supply is owned by the small percent. Now that's changed. That is a huge deal for new money to come in. Meaning, when you are trying to look at the long term, trying to look at what's going to get this to 100,000, whatever is going to get your particular coin to the top, one factor to keep in mind is how can a bank or an investor or somebody own a large percentage of it. And it may make you want to throw up the idea of having a coin where banks own a large percentage of it. You may hate that idea, but what I will tell you is that if there is a coin, and I have no idea if there is or is not a coin, but if there is one that a bank can come in or a investment firm can come in and own a large percentage of it and know the people that do own the other big percentage of it, almost like a collusion situation, the chances of them dumping more and more money into that coin are way higher than when they don't know who owns the money supply, right? They have to be able to control their returns on some level, or at least protect themselves from not getting screwed. And I think that's something that there's no article about this. There's no real way to illustrate this other than just the conversations I'm having. And as you go through, you can look at things like the rich list, but just also you can look at, on-chain FX has some good money velocity tokens. You can look not just at market cap and total supply and all that, but look through the wallets, look through the top 500 wallets. I know that sounds ridiculous and boring, but you'll see some really interesting trends. You'll see a lot of these whales and what they're owning. And you'll see that there are certain coins where whales are starting to come in and trying to buy up a big percentage of that coin. And it may feel like this isn't part of the promise of crypto, but I'm telling you, that's what needs to happen for these prices to go through the roof on any of them. Doesn't matter which one, and you can hate it or not, but that's just the truth. So rock and roll. We'll keep this rocking back in San Francisco. So we'll be crushing. We'll do some live streams this week, or at least one this week, because we got the bandwidth back. And with that, I will catch you guys later. All right, peace out.